Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage Principal Analyst from Constellation Research, Steve Wilson.
Thanks, everybody. Let's keep ringing those bells outside. Although it's quality, not quantity, right? Hey, I know that there's no such thing as perfect security. Just barely adequate security would suit me most of the time. But look, thought experiment. Go to the bank and talk to them about security. Ask them about security. Have you ever done that? No, of course not. But if you did, and the bank manager said, I'm pretty sure that we're going to be robbed in the next 2 years and you're going to lose all your dough, you would find that the word security was being misapplied. And frankly, speaking on behalf of my profession, and we use that term lightly, we have bastardised the word security. I've started a hashtag a few years ago, security isn't secure. And I mean that sincerely. I think that the intellectual foundations of what we're doing needs to be overturned and rethought. So I'm delighted to have 4 really super creative thinkers here today. We're hardly going to solve the problem, we're hardly going to scratch the surface, but we're going to give you some ideas to think about, and we're going to start to be creative about this profession of ours, see if we can't reinvigorate the word secure. So let's introduce ourselves, folks, and we'll get into it.
Sure. My name is Dr. David A. Bray. I am the Executive Director for People-Centered Internet. And for me, the importance of security is about trust in organizations and individuals.
Hi, Jeff Nolan with SecureAuth. SecureAuth is a company with a long history in multi-factor authentication, strong authentication. We're now pushing that into more of a detection, understanding when bad things are happening and responding to them in real time rather than waiting for it.
Hello everyone, Mike Kail, CTO and co-founder of Cybrick. Cybrick's an automation orchestration platform focused on code and application security and the culture of DevSecOps.
My name is Chenxi Wang. I'm the founder of the Jane Bond Project, which is a cybersecurity consultancy and investment firm.
One of my least favourite ideas is that things like the law and regulation are not keeping up with tech. But I want to ask the question, is security keeping up with tech? You know, we're talking about artificial intelligence, we're talking about weaponising AI, we've been talking about maybe mechanising social engineering attacks, kind of nightmarish. Can we reflect on whether or not the security profession and security is keeping up with cyberspace?
So I'd suggest that security has never kept up with tech. And the example
I agree, yeah.
Let's just drop that and just get it on the table. And I'd actually give the example of when cars came along, there was this completely unthought of phenomenon, which is you can now commit crime across state lines.
Right.
And that was something that no one ever thought about, because previously when you didn't have a car, you basically knew the people in your town and you knew who might be the likely suspects. And so that gave rise to new security requirements. And so we should not be surprised as we go into this world of automation, AI, that these same tools that we're looking at to help defend and actually improve our security are also going to be used by the other side to attack or exploit or do other shenanigans to distract from your organization's business.
You know, we're all familiar, I think, with dual-use goods, the idea that cryptography is a dual-use good. In the 1970s in Australia, a certain Kawasaki motorcycle was deemed a dual-use good because it was faster than the cop cars. And the police in Australia tried to hobble that particular model of motorcycle, just like we're hobbling crypto right now. Jeff?
Well, I think the empirical evidence is very conclusive. Security is not keeping up. Data breaches continue to rise. And the reach of data breaches has gone beyond anybody's wildest expectations. So I don't think there's anything that...
What are you thinking of there? For example?
If only it were the one, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. You know, and I think that what David pointed out is true. I mean, the very same technologies that we've been developing to combat threats is actually being used against us. So at some point, we need to stop reacting to security incidents and start getting ahead of them.
Mm. And we might pull back to the AI point shortly. You know,
well, this is where Mike's, you know, to give you a good segue, I'll soft land it for you. we gotta get people out of the security operations role. I mean, this is a very important point. The move to machine learning and AI is a precursor to an automated security infrastructure. And by automated, it's just not in the response mechanism, but it's also in the policy development. If you have a security posture that relies on, hardened roles and policies, it's vulnerable.
And I think to take the softball, the problem is we keep talking about the shortage of cyber talent that security can't keep up. Meanwhile, security's falling further and further behind because we keep talking about the same thing. So how do we close that chasm? Because developers and operations have taken the culture of DevOps and used automation and orchestration to speed up software development. I mean, there's going to be 111 billion new lines of code written this year. So how do we make sure that we have security assurance around that and we do testing? So I think it's about automation, orchestration of the existing tools and converge them into a strategic framework instead of trying to scale out more people, buying more and more tools. We go to RSA and there's next gen this, there's next gen that. That's not solving the problem. We spend 20 plus years of firewalls, perimeter thinking, and more tooling and more scaling out. Like, we need to completely change the paradigm.
Couldn't agree more. Chenxi?
Agreed, but so automation is really the key, right? Right now, we can't keep up. So just go back to your point. This year, there's about 7,200 new vulnerabilities disclosed in CVE, which is National Vulnerability Database. 7,200 new, actually median and high vulnerabilities. So those are the things you want to work on. Now, going back to one of the biggest breaches, we know Equifax, right? So people say, oh, they know about the existence of that vulnerability. Why didn't they patch? Well, patching is hard, So do you know how long it takes to patch? On average, how long it takes to patch a vulnerability in a sizable system? How long? How many man hours? Minimum 50, more like 100 man hours. So if you look at 7,200 vulnerabilities you need to take care of, I'm sorry, it's not an easy thing to do. So if you don't have automation, we're gonna continue to see Equifax, Yahoo, all these large.
So 7,200, my math, 7,200 times 100, is that 70,000?
I think it's 20 years.
Yeah, 2,000 hours a day, yeah. I mean, seriously.
Yeah.
Full-time team, 20 people, and all they do is patch all year.
And patching often doesn't work.
It doesn't work anyway. Yep. So automation, I mean, let's come back from your end. What prospect is there to automate it? Are there tools, and what would you say people?
Well, there are tools. Like Mike's company is doing security orchestration for application security workflows and tasks, and there are other companies are doing workflows for SOCs, right? So if you find a signal here, typically today the SOC analyst will write a script and farm it out, but writing a script takes time. So today there are orchestration platforms that takes the incoming signal and automatically farm out scripts for you to look for new things and remediation. So all these tying workflows together and looking at automated policies is a new space for security.
But I think the technology exists. This is a cultural problem.
I'll ask you both to amplify on this, because AI is the theme. Is it hyperbolic to call those tools intelligent at this stage? Or, how smart are they and how adaptive are they? Is
They're pretty smart.
Learning occurring?
Yeah, they're pretty smart.
Depends how much data you feed into the machine to learn from.
So I don't think they're very smart. I think they seriously. So you may disagree, but machine learning is about looking for patterns you don't know existed before. Right? So if you have data, you can do clustering, you can say these are outliers, these are new patterns. Yeah, you can do that with security today, but often the algorithm is very primitive. So I've looked at lots of companies' AI algorithms. Decision tree is called AI today. I mean, okay, you can call that AI, but the cusp of AI innovation, I don't think has made into security, like deep learning. I don't know anybody is doing real deep learning security today.
Well, I think we're on the very early stages of it. I mean, a lot of this stuff is only becoming commercially available this year. And the amount of data that you feed in it's a double-edged sword. We track 750 million devices. We have 1.2 trillion DNS queries a day that we're collecting. I mean, what would you do with that, right? In the absence of a machine learning capability, there's no way to do anything with it. So now we're learning not just how to analyze the data, but like, okay, now that we can actually analyze it, what are we going to do with it? Because just having the data, the amount of logs that get accumulated in Splunk databases across the world is mind-boggling, right? So it's like, what are you going to do with that? That's the question that needs to be answered.
You need an automated, repeatable process to feed actionable data to build a machine learning model to then use AI techniques to power this. But machine learning and AI, dude, it's not a panacea to security. And I think there's a lot of companies out there that say that, and people are falling for it, unfortunately. And then they're implementing it, and they don't know why they've implemented it, and they think it's good.
Well, you put intelligent on there, and seriously, the board and the non-security people are going to see that and go, right, that's. Now I know that David's got some thoughts about how do we keep the human element in managing these.
Yes, so actually I was going to first amplify that I also agree that I don't think the tools are getting more intelligent, but they're definitely not too intelligent yet, because there's two other dimensions of security. Let's say we patched everything and everything was, as far as we could tell, structurally secure. That doesn't mean that someone's going to find a new way to use something that is structurally secure to still cause damage to you. An example would be, car could be completely secure and everything like that, but someone drives it into a building. That was not a security weakness. It was just somebody using either your application or using some other functions in ways you never intended. So now you erect a barrier around your building. Next time they actually drive the car by and they don't drive into the building, they just detonate the gasoline tank. So we need to be ready for unexpected consequences of using software as a service or using other logging credentials that are not insecure. They're just being used to actually do new vulnerabilities to the organization. And that's something that a machine can't do until they've seen it once or seen it multiple times. The other thing, though, is also the recognition that it is the human element. I mean, right now we have not seen attacks orchestrated by an AI, as far as we know, but maybe that will happen one day. But there are still people behind there setting the goals for these bots or for these automated programs, and it's the human that's actually doing that. And you often have to ask why. And so I think this gets to the big challenge of, we could completely secure everything in the known digital space in our organizations as well as other sectors, and we still would not be completely secure. And that's equivalent to anyone in this room saying right now, I'm never going to get sick again. I mean, I don't know. Would anyone ever raise your hand and say you're never going to get sick again? So why do we treat this as if that's what we're looking for as the ultimate end goal, as opposed to reducing the likelihood of you getting sick, and if you do get sick, minimize the dwell time? And then that raises the whole question of, once you've done the automation to make sure your organization's infrastructure is secure as possible, can you instrument it to give you alerts that something odd is going on here? And maybe it's not an integrity issue. Maybe it's just more someone is using your application in a way that you never expected before, possibly to get access to your financial systems or other things.
So you've talked over a couple of years now about literally using something like the Centers for Disease Control to treat security as an epidemiological challenge. We don't have a lot of time to expand on your thesis. I would really recommend, it won't be hard for you to find that online, but I'd like the other panelists to reflect on a bit of a culture gap. Like, have you folks, mostly tech, have you heard about this idea about public health, and what's your response?
I think it's a good idea. To backtrack a bit, fortunately for us, attackers, which come in three variants, criminals, hacktivists, and nation states, right? The latter is a wild card, but the other two tend to optimize their resources for targets that have the least amount of protection. So if you make it hard for an attacker, they tend not to bother, because they're pretty efficient users of time. They'll go find something else, unless you have something that's exceptionally valuable, in which case, you need to be protecting it anyways. But I think, though, that getting back to the treating it as a health thing, I think there's a lot to be said for that, because cybersecurity is intrinsically connected to a human condition, whether it's on the protection side or on the attack side.
So your point about not looking for perfection, but putting barriers in place and knowing that some of those attackers are going for the low-hanging fruit. Yeah. It's a little bit like malaria control. We live with malaria in a sense in some parts of the world, but we use mosquito nets. We stay outdoors or indoors at the right times of day. So these sorts of ploys, right? Living with the inevitable.
Yeah, perfection is not achievable.
And I think the core of what David's talking about is really what we call resiliency. So how resilient are you? And security is not an end state. It has to be a continuous process. And instead of health, I've used the fitness analogy. So as a former marathoner, you don't just wake up and go race a marathon. You have to do ongoing training, and there's a whole holistic program. And security needs to take that same methodology and prescriptive program on an ongoing, continuous basis.
All right. Can we switch gear a little bit?
Sure.
I love that health idea, because it's been around for a while too. It is really about resiliency. But when we think about the new technologies that's coming into everyday life, AI and machine learning, they are one of the things I see is the evolution of technologies are going really fast, but without thinking about the impact of security as part of the evolution, right? So one branch of study that I've been following fairly closely is this thing called adversarial samples for AI algorithms. So what that is you can take a data set and intentionally inject adversarial samples into the data set to completely eschew the clustering algorithm, if you will. And there's a very famous paper that Google wrote that you've got a panda, and so machine learning algorithm process the picture and say, hey, it's a panda, right? And then they overlay a vector on top of the graph, and to human eye, looks exactly still a panda. And the machine learning algorithm process say, hey, it's a gibbon. So why? Because it leveraged a specific sort of nuances in the algorithm. And so that kind of example is still rare today, but that's what's going to come, right? So if we know about the nuances of the algorithm, the bad guy is going to use that to inject bad data and to thwart the algorithm. And then on your side, how do you fortify your AI defense system against that is another research interest.
So to sort of build on that, actually, DARPA, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency in the United States, actually recently asked the question of the private sector, if you were to do exactly that, the panda, and confusing the machine that it no longer thinks it's a panda, but do it to the financial sector. Because you can imagine these are AI, these are automated bots that are doing trading. What could you do to confuse the bots to think it's now the time to buy or now the time to sell? That's not even an integrity issue. That's not a patching issue. That is just you have fed bad data and you've gotten the AI to do something that's to your advantage. And so this, I think, and agree that the CDC, the public health model, has existed for a while, and it's actually quite funny. The World Economic Forum, of which I'm a member, back in 2013 said it would not work because CEOs don't care about security. So here we are 4 years later. We might be needing to update that paper, but anyway. But back in 2003, when I was actually at the Center for Disease Control, we knew about severe acute respiratory syndrome. We weren't calling it that at the time, but we knew that there was something atypical febrile illness going on in China way before China finally admitted something was going on. And it was not because we were asking them what was going on. We knew about it because the sales of garlic were going up in price. And the garlic is seen as a cure-all in certain areas. And so that gets to the question of how can you instrument your organization, not just for integrity and resiliency questions, but if all of a sudden you see this new type of data being either forced on your organization or things like that, can it raise a question and say, this is odd, this is out of the ordinary. I now need to have a combination of both my humans and my AI take a look at it.
That's fascinating, and I knew that this would be probably more frustrating than illuminating because there's so much going on. But can we wrap in the next minute with what's the best thing that you've seen in security recently? Let's try and finish on a high note. What's your best experience?
What's the best?
Best thing?
Obviously, my startups.
Exactly.
That's all right.
There we go.
That's all right.
Shameless plug, but
Look, I did put that in my email as we were preparing. But
Yes. So I would say
I knew that the question would be what?
So actually, just last year, DARPA had a competition, which was the humans versus the automated machines playing capture the flag digitally. The machine came in third against the humans. And so I think this is very similar to, the first time we said have the car drive itself along our obstacle course, it only got about 500 feet. I will be interested to see in years ahead exactly what we were talking about here, which is you can maybe have the machine do the patching and the automated things to free up the humans to do the more hard, more creative work about also defending the organization.
Yeah, good point. Reasons to be cheerful, I think.
I've seen a number of customers recently starting to embrace a passwordless future, which I get pretty excited about because we sell more stuff when they do that. But by moving the risk analysis up into the pre-authentication stage, you're actually giving a user an incredibly good experience. The best security is that which you never see.
Mm-hmm. Very true.
I think for me, like it's seeing now that security teams and engineering teams and DevOps teams are actually talking together. I've had them in the same room and they're in agreement and they understand that there's nothing's going to be 100% secure, but they need to deliver continuous security assurance around their product instead of insurance. So there's a refreshing cultural change that's happening.
Yeah. Well, more cheerfulness. I mean, that ability to work together and understand.
Yeah, it comes down to collaboration.
Yep.
So for me, thinking back when I was a graduate student, CS graduate student, I remember that was a long time ago. I won't tell you which year, but back then nobody wants to learn AI. There wasn't machine learning back then, but it was AI, and the AI class was the least attended because everybody knows that there's nothing to do in AI other than expert system. So it's really great to see that came full circle, and now in the security industry, AI is becoming more of an impacting technology. So to me, the best thing yet to come is actually take all of our jobs away. I think that would be the biggest impact of AI. If we can, like you said, automate the low-level, low-skill tasks so that humans don't have to do it. In fact, users don't have to even know about security existing. It's just taken care of for them. I think that would be the future, and I'm looking forward to that being the best thing ever, is getting rid of all jobs.
Amen.
Indeed.
Well, I think security is a good place for people to work. It's a good place for people to be investing, and not just because it's busy and not just because the salaries are going up, but because it's creative and people are really thinking outside the box. And so thanks for sharing your thoughts and your good minds, your good thinking on this today. Thanks everybody. Chenxi.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mike, Jeff and David. Thanks guys.
Thank you.